interests, and I was asked to give a little presentation. So originally it was going to be more of a bio thing, but I didn't really want to do the bio thing. So I thought maybe I'd do a little bit about the plane that I have. So so later at the end of this, we can come over and look at the thing that I've been working on, the rudder for it. So I own a Luscombe 8E, and there's the number 1918K, and the serial number is not really important. It's interesting because if you look at this rudder I've got, it's an old plane. It was built in 1940, and it's got the NC number on there. See if that work? Okay. So for those of you that don't know what a Luscombe is, the first part of this presentation is going to tell you what it is. So Luscombe is, he was a designer, company owner, and was involved in doing a lot of different aircraft. They'll be building brand new Luscombe 8s, and they're going to call it LS for light sport. So it's going to be pretty good plane. I'm going to back up just a little bit. My interest in Luscombes. So I was taking flying lessons up in Wisconsin, near Boscobel, and we were in this little strip in Cassville. It's right along the river. And I was up flying one day, came back, put the plane away, and there was a guy there that landed on this shiny, landed in the shiny metal plane, and I had no idea what it was, and so just chit-chatting with him, and he said, "You want to fly it? Go for a ride in it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So he told me it was a Luscombe, and in our flight, a short flight, and he proceeded to tell me what a great airplane it was. And compared to what I was flying, which was a Ronco Champ at the time, this thing it had a lot better performance. It was really obvious at the time. So I kind of liked it. He talked it up about the quality of the build and the performance. So I kind of bid on it. And when a couple years ago, I was looking for a project to work on in retirement, and I started looking at Luscombes, and that's what I ended up getting. There's a whole lot more to that story, but some of you know. But we're working on it. I have 3 Luscombes, so.
So this new company, are they going to start supporting? And
Yes, they're going to manufacture new parts, and anybody that needs parts, they can go there. There's a cache of old parts. I have a reference. It's listed in my references. The Luscombe Historical Foundation or something like that. Guy Doug Combs is his name. He had a lot of the parts. The type certificate for the 8s were sold to other individuals. There was a guy up in Michigan, Moody Larson, I think was his name, and he did some STC work and put 150 horsepower on these planes, which were originally designed for a 50 horsepower engine. So they were. You have to be I would think you have to be a pretty good pilot for it, because it throws they have to add weight in the back because to help balance out the extra weight of the engine and the bigger engine up in front. So Luscombe models, oops, oh wait, sorry about that. Many different models. Jim gave me a book of Luscombes, and there's a lot of history in there, a lot of early development, but the older ones are the Phantoms, and then there were many before that as well. I believe he was somehow connected with the Monocoupe with the Veely. So his history goes back that far. They came up with a Model 50, and the Model 50 was supposed to be the first, I think it was a Lycoming, came out with a 50 at one time, and they were designing it for that, and then they kind of they didn't really put that into production. So then they came up with the Model 65, which was also a development. Then they had the Model 8, and the Model 8 is the basis for probably 5,000 airplanes that they did produce. So the first one was Model 8A, and they had the B's and the C's and the D's, and these were all pre-World War II. So 1940-ish, 1939, late 38, 39, and 40, is when they started building those. So with the onset of the war, production was halted, and they did component parts for other manufacturers at that time. There's a lot of other history of the company. Don Luscombe was eventually moved out of the company by another gentleman from Austria, and because of his country of origin, they thought he was a Nazi, I guess, and they took the company away from him and put it into like some sort of receivership, and it was the government managed the company, and we all know how that goes. So so then they came out after the war. They still produced the 8As, and the 8As had 65 horsepower Continental Armstrong starters. So they also had rag wings too, but no wood other than a little bit on the floor, no nails and no glue. This was a big marketing thing for them. So as it turns out, it was a pretty good performing aircraft. So as we go down further through the list, you have the 8E, which is the model I have, which is uprated in horsepower. The 8D, it started with a 65, and then they went with a 75, which is fuel injected, then an 85, which is what I have in mind, and then to a 90. So those are the ones that were that came out. And the 8F was done, I believe it also had the 90 in it. And the final model that they had was the T8F, which was a tandem seat, not the side-by-side seat. So somebody in our chapter has one. The guy down from Galesburg. I can't remember. Does anybody remember his name? No, his dad has the FBO down there, I guess.
Wilford?
Yes. Yeah. Is it Dan?
Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel. Okay. So.
So what? Yeah,
A T8F, yes. They were going after a flight observation plane that eventually, the O2, I think, won the competition. So, and they ended up building them for pipelines, for just scouting on the pipelines, and they had also converted them for spraying operations as well, small-scale spraying. Okay, so my Luscombe is an 8E, manufactured in 1947. This was in January 1947. It has a serial number like all planes, and then it has the NC number, but now I guess the regulation is sometimes you can use the NC on your plane, but the rules, you have to follow the rules on it. So mine will just be N1918 kilo. So this plane history, originally it was sold to California, to someone in California. It was moved to Texas, to Arizona, and then I've moved it to Illinois. So a little bit about the characteristics of the plane. So gross weight on this one is 1,400 pounds. It's 850 pounds empty. So two guys my size give you about half a load of fuel. So, but it's it sips fuel. It's very economical to fly. So wingspan is 35 feet, chord's 50. Overall length is 20 feet. Height 6'3", prop diameter 72. I have a, I think it's a Macaulay 72-inch clip trip, I think they call it, the prop. And for those who are into the performance stuff, the power loading, 16.5 pounds per horsepower, and the wing loading, 10 pounds per square foot. So the engine that I have is been rebuilt. So it's at 85 horsepower at 2575 RPM, cruises at 2350. Idle RPM is sit there at 4.5 quarts of oil, 5.5 gallons an hour. Capacity is 30 gallons, two 15-gallon tanks in the E model. The A model has, I think it's a 14-gallon fuselage tank. So they've changed the design some really good changes in the design over the years, and fuel rating is minimum 73 octane. So this was the cool thing I thought of was the performance. So max speed is 125. So Stalling speed 48, VNE 145, and operates 48 to 112. Pretty reasonable takeoff run and landing roll as well. As long as you're not landing long, you'll be in pretty good shape. 800 feet per minute climb. 72 best climb rate. Goes about 650 miles, but most people will want to stop and take a break before they ever get there to 650. So, and it goes up to 16.5. So, Taylor Crafts, Cubs, etc., with similar size engines. The Luscombe's a little slicker, and so they usually can kind of outperform them, not by a wide margin, but it does take the bragging rights. So some references. More and more I learn, I find different places to get information. They have a very active Facebook presence. 3 different pages, both for or all 3 are aircraft parts and then aircraft support. So a lot of the people that are the known experts in this, they're very active in it. So there's still support out there. If you think you need something or have a question, and I have done several questions with this group, and I'm still waiting for an answer back on my last one. Another thing is the Continental Luscombe Association. They have a I think it's a quarterly newsletter called The Current, and it's got regular sections in it, and I'm always looking at the restoration and maintenance section. So I have a collection of those that came with the aircraft when I bought it back to the I believe it's to the first issue. So there's a lot of people, and the Continental Luscombe, those people are mostly west of the Rockies, although you know we joined and took part in, not in their fly-ins, but reading the information. It's pretty good. And then another one is the Luscombe Endowment, and then the Don Luscombe Aviation History Foundation. I mentioned Doug Combs. He's the other one, and he is the source. He's the final source for almost all the hard-to-get parts. So if we ever need anything, we go to him. My particular plane, we had a full set of new cables made up through them. So instead of making up your own, he specializes in these, and and as well as a lot of other hard to find parts. Brakes are another one. Okay, so the logs, just a little bit about the logs. I have full logs from when the plane was new. The first entry in the log is 1947 factory. So the next line down there is interesting, peculiar to my aircraft. In 1963, the aircraft was given an experimental classification. So that was done because the guy that owned it didn't like the design and thought that he could do better. So he started doing some different things to the aircraft, putting in stiffeners in the horizontal stabilizer. He did some other things to the aircraft too. But when he went to get the SDC for that, the FAA, or whoever it was in 1963, told him that he needed to provide some proof of test to destruction, and he didn't have the money to start wrecking airplanes for the FAA, so he decided to put it back the way it was. So, but the guy I bought the plane from said that that doubler is still in mine, so it's a little stiffer. So we have a big gap in the log entries from 1973 to 87, and I was told that it sat in tie downs for quite a long time, and the owner came and would start it up periodically just to make sure it was all lubed, etc. And so in 1987 it was purchased by Troy Stimson. It's a gentleman that I met when I bought the plane, and then also went down to visit him in Florida about 2 months ago. So it was a great visit, and he told me a lot more about the plane. So at the time I purchased the aircraft log has 771 hours. So, which for a 75-year-old airplane, pretty low. But because it sat for a while, that probably accounts for a lot of that. So after it sat for all that time and Troy bought the plane, the only thing he had to do, he had a A&P&I look at it, and he ended up getting a ferry permit. All he had to have was brake cables. So he flew it from Santee, California. Does anybody know where that is? It's Southern California somewhere, I'm not sure exactly. To Justin, Texas, which is close to Dallas. So it's interesting here because they have the current time on the airframe after Troy flew it for a while, 785 hours, but the engine log has 829 hours. So I expect that that is because it ran in the tie downs for a while. So it just, I always thought that they would be the same, but evidently not. So the engine at 829 hours was removed from the plane. Just in Texas, where the plane was based, they sold the airport, and he had to move it. And the plane was in the process of being dismantled, and so at the same time he had the engine done, and he had to truck the plane to his next location. So he ended up selling the plane to another guy in Arizona. So we went from California to Texas to Arizona, and then I bought it from the guy that lived in Arizona. Okay, this is the better part. No more words, it's all pictures. So this is Luscombe marketing, and it's a kind of an eye chart, but 28 people, 3,500 pounds of people sitting on the metal wing. Originally, recall they were fabric wing, and then they started making the metal wing after the war ended, and they went back into production. And they had still some leftover stock of the rag wings, so they put those on, and when they were done with that, they did all metal wing. And they had some similar design changes in the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer as well. They found ways to make them more efficiently, much fewer parts, saved a lot of hours, labor on them. So I'm going to show you just some pictures of some Luscombes here. This is an A model with metal wings, but it's got the squared off tail. The vertical stabilizer on this is squared off, and the rudder is also kind of very angular. Production usually had a curved rudder like the one I have here. So, and if you look at them, there's some distinguishing characteristics. You can tell even from a distance that it's a metal wing on this one because it only has a single strut per side. On the next airplane, oh, and this one here doesn't have the small D window behind the doors. So this would be it's probably an A. Here's another picture. This is the rag wing, and if you look real closely on the right side, you can see two struts coming down from where the landing gear meets, and some extra bracing on that. That's a rag wing, and that is also this is probably an A model. I didn't know what this was, so I called it a Franken Luscombe. This is a turbine. This is a turbine powered. So I think it was the only one, and it flew for a while, and I had heard that they had an accident with it, but they're rebuilding it, is the last I've heard. So you don't get a whole lot more speed, regardless of the horsepower that you put on it. The between 65, 75, 85, and 90 horse, and some of them actually have a 200, 100 horse on there. There's maybe 10 miles an hour difference in the speed. So the real difference is in its ability to climb. So this was the last one, the T8F Observer, and this is the tandem seat, and it's a lot different. Luscombes are very tight with two people in the cockpit, but this one you've got like the entire width of the cockpit, original width, and they moved the rudder pedals out, and put a left-hand throttle on it. So person in the back also has throttle and a stick and rudder pedals. So the visibility on this thing is outstanding. They had put observer doors, put plexiglass in the lower part of the door, and the person in the back, the visibility is just really fantastic. And this is an A model here, although it has metal wings. So there's a lot of different configurations, and most of these planes, because of their age, have had some sort of mishap at one time or another. So there's a lot of parts out there, and so the planes I think it's probably pretty rare for them all to have the original parts that were originally on the plane as it was built. But people put them together and fly them, and there's well over 1,000 of them still flying. Okay, so now this was my plane when it was delivered to me. So it was, what do you do when you have a truckload of parts? Well, you got to figure out a starting point, and Mr. Smith has helped me a little bit with that, trying to get oriented into what things that we need to do, the assessment. I've inventoried all the parts that I've got. I've got the instruments I need. The only thing that I'm supplying is time and labor. So most everything else is there. So when too fast, sorry. So when I got it, it had this black crinkle paint, and it wasn't to my liking. I didn't want to have that. I had seen a lot more of the Luscombes out there that the interiors have been upgraded over time, and I was looking for maybe a glossier paint job, something a little flashier. So I decided to strip it, and this is part of the stripping process, and this is what it looks like today. So in doing this, it was probably a pretty good idea, because I noticed, you can't see it on the picture here, but you can see the holes here around this. These were the glove boxes. It had 2 glove boxes, one on each side. The left side, everybody puts radios in there, and it's kind of a roll of the dice of what you're going to get on the right side. This one was still configured for a glove box. So here, if you look close, you can see I got some extra parts. There's a dark corner back there where I have another a Luscombe, and actually there's 2 of them there. So got a lot of extra parts. I ran out of room, so I ended up moving to a bigger hangar. And you can kind of see there, the one on the left is the one I'm working on right now, 1918. The one to the right by the engine stand, that's 1216 Bravo. And the white one in the very back doesn't really have a number, nor does it have a data tag. It was going to be just a parts bird. So started working on it, and I've got the engine mounted on it right now. Still didn't put any paint on the instrument panel, and it says for now, because that quite likely that I'm going to pull the engine off of it again, and then pull the landing gear as well for inspection. And this is kind of a just a shot in the hangar. You can see my workspace. Okay, so this kind of brings me to where I'm at today. The best looking Luscombes out there are polished, you know, and then I've had discussions with a lot of people, and they said, well, you know, how are you going to finish it? I said, well, I'd like to have it polished. And they said, well, do you really want to polish, or do you want to put that time into flying? Well, of course I want to fly it, but it looks really good when it's shiny too. So it's still, you know, the good guy and the bad guy on both shoulders. I'm still there. They're still talking to me. So I have a little. Now I can show you here. You're not going to be able to see it, but when I'm done here, which is very shortly, you'll be able to come up and take a look at this. This is a rudder. This is one of the original bronze color. And he wanted to have a shiny Luscombe, and I can understand that. So he paid somebody to strip it and polish it. Well, when they did the polishing, I believe they did use Nuvite. I've seen in some of the receipts that he's got from the company that did it, they said that they used Nuvite. And if you look at these raised rivets right here, there's a lot of the polishing compound that didn't get cleaned off. And I suspect that after many years of that being left on there, it's contributed a little bit to some corrosion. So if I expect to have a nice shiny airplane, I've got to take that stuff off to make sure that we're not going to corrode. And then even if I was going to paint it, I'd still have to take that compound off because the paint won't stick to it very well. So I'm in a position where I have to do that. So what I did is I started trying to develop a process that would take this residue off. And so under the bullet there that says tried, so paint stripper. So I tried paint stripper, not very much luck. Mineral spirits, with a little bit of mechanical, meaning I used a tool, a hard tool. With a little bit of that and mineral spirits, it had some limited success. The thing that really worked was aluminum oxide, and that's something, back when I was in the Navy, I was a structural mechanic, and I worked with it extensively. You have to be really careful. You have to have a good touch and a good feel for doing it, otherwise you're going to start removing a lot of aluminum. So you have to be really careful with it. And that takes it out, but it's so hard. It's very meticulous work. Let's see, so I tried steam as well. I was hoping that the differential in the temperature between the steam would break up that residue. Not really, it didn't. So then going through my toolbox, I ran into the heat gun, so which we usually use for scraping paint. And so I tried that, and that actually softened it up a little bit. But it's not, that too is going to be a very long process. And I don't think I'll get it too hard or too hot to bother the structure of the metal. But I always have that in the back of my mind. So I also had some dental instruments for the crevice work. So when you come up and you look at this, you can see that some of these round-headed rivets are actually kind of pushed in a little bit. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, if that was just part of the manufacturing process, but it really is kind of difficult to get in there. You'll see it. And then Neverdull. Has anybody ever heard of Neverdull? Okay, so my first experience with Neverdull was in the Navy. We had a Convair, I think it was a 330, twin engine, 2800 prop job. And the guys on the midnight shift got caught sleeping by the division officer. So what they did is they had a case of Neverdull, and those guys had to shine up the entire aircraft because there was a lot of bare metal on it. So that was their punishment. But this stuff works really well. And I tried that on here, and it was probably better than the mineral spirits for taking this residue off. But I'm still not to the point where I think I've got a real good process that I can do all over it in a reasonable amount of time. So I'm still looking. And now this is the thing that my tech advisor said, well, why don't you just bring this in and then put it out to the group. So if anybody else has had this issue trying to get some of this polished residue off, I'd love to hear how you did it.
Have you had any discussions with the manufacturer?
Calling Nuvite is next.
Okay.
So there's stuff on there, and I actually thought about taking this up to Oshkosh this year, or I have other parts that have the same thing, and ask them, see what they would advise. So a telephone call would probably work, but that's different than actually touching it and seeing what the issue is. So,
Carl,
sir.
Soda blaster? You ever
I
tried?
haven't tried that.
I've got the soda and I've got a gun, but I tried it on a John Deere tractor. I tried to restore it. It didn't have very much power either.
Yeah, I would worry because of the metal, you're blasting iron or steel.
They use the soda because it doesn't, at least on steel, it doesn't,
It won't pit.
yeah.
Yeah,
Where you do
yeah.
sandblasting.
Right.
Yeah. where
Or
the
shot
soda's
peening it or whatever.
Soft
Yeah.
enough, but
Yeah.
I,
So yeah, I'm still open to suggestions. Everybody thinks they've got a good idea. I'm all ears.
Are you just trying to remove this so you can recoat it again with either another polish or?
Well, well, that's a good question, because if you look really close at this, you can see there are some areas that look like they have a little bit of corrosion. And some of the areas, here again, if you look close, we might be through the cladding and into the actual alloy. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Paint can look nice, but shiny is much nicer. So
Well, then the solution to remove what's there
yes,
and then recoat it again with that polish or repolish it.
right. I need to do that anyway, probably. So
I guess the concern is, won't you put that?
well, you end up with the same thing. Yeah. Well, this has been on here probably 30 years. You know, that'd be a rough estimate. And it's been in there, and the plane has been down south, so it's been baking on for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's why I went with the heat gun too. And like I said, the heat gun did seem to soften it, but it's a combination of using the heat gun and then the dental instrument to try to get in the crevice. So, and you can't, you know, if you go to the,
Did you have a toothbrush?
oh yeah, a lot of different types of brushes actually.
Yeah.
So, and you can see on the Alclad, even a toothbrush, a nylon bristle brush, will leave marks in that. So,
we go on it?
no, I haven't. I have some of that. I could probably try that. Yeah, Goof Off or Goo Gone, or yeah, there's a number of products. That, I haven't hit the end of the list yet, but I've tried a few things. So, Jim thought maybe this would be a good, just a good little presentation. So, yes, sir.
Maybe carbon tetrachloride?
I don't have any experience with that. I tried some other stuff. I know methyl ethyl ketone was going to be my next thing, but I'm not sure that would work. You know, something that would go in there and soften it, and I can remove it with a cotton cloth, old towel or something like that is what I'm looking for. So
I just say it because at that time that was made, carbon tet was used everywhere.
okay,
Methyl ethyl was forbidden by the government.
well, I was working for the government when we were using it, so not anymore. That was a long time ago.
You can't use it like you're saying. Methyl ethyl, no, because it's carcinogen, cancer-causing agent.
Oh, good to know.
By any day.
You can buy it.
Yeah.
I didn't say
Yeah.
you couldn't get it. I'm just saying that the federal government is saying, At least when we tried to clean parts over at the arsenal, they said, no way. Everything that had to be in, get rid of it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we can do.
More questions?
Anything else for Carl?
Yeah.
Anytime you need some engraving,
Uh,
the panel,
Oh, well, you see where my panel's at right now.
Yeah.
So, and I have a plan for, I know what's going in each one of those holes. I have the instruments already.
okay.
So, but we're waiting. I want to paint on it first and see what we come up with. I've got all kinds of material, leather, etc., for reupholstering and maybe doing the doors, but I'm also conscious of the fact that I don't want to add any more weight than I have to. I want it to look nice, but I want to be able to fly it and not compromise the performance by adding too much weight. Anybody else? Well, thanks for the question.